This episode of Shaun of the South is brought to you by Case Knives, a tradition of my family dating back to my granddaddy, who once said the best way to cure idle hands was to build something. So keep your hands sharp with a Case knife. And by WNC Original Music, who makes the music for this podcast possible, scouring the country on a never-ending quest to find the music you ought to hear. Check out WNC Original Music Podcast today and hear the Carolinas sing.
Hey, you are listening to Shaun of the South, and I'm your host tonight, Sean Dietrich. And man, we got a great show lined up ahead of here. A great show coming to you live via the podcast airwaves and the radio waves all over this fine nation. This guy you see behind me here fixing to blow your mind with that guitar is Matt Sellers, everybody. Matt Sellers.
Way down south, 10 miles back from the old hen house, picking supper from the ground. Out of beans, better run to town. Don't care what the people say. Talk, talk, talk all through the day. Wonder how I can live this way. It's how I like it, how it's gonna stay. Mashed potatoes till the corn gets high. Knock me off, tap our toes. Fiddle plays till the whiskey goes. Don't care what the people say. Talk, talk, talk all through the day. Wonder how I can live this way. It's how I like it, how it's gonna stay. Up to that rooster call, he won't let you sleep at all. Stubborn mule won't pull the plow. Hole in the fence, let the chickens out. Don't care what the people say. Talk, talk, talk all through the day. Wonder how I can live this way. It's how I like it, how it's gonna stay. Skinny dip that lake at night, far, far from those city lights. Fall asleep in a feather bed while horseflies fly above my head. Don't care what the people say. Talk, talk, talk all through the day. Wonder how I can live this way. It's how I like it, how it's gonna stay. Oh, that's how I like it. How it's gonna stay. Railroad woman, call my name. If I was leaving, would you do the same? Railroad woman, come around. Tell me, does your train pass through my town? It seems to me every day I wake up alone, out loud I say, my railroad woman's always gone away. just to hear you say, baby, don't go rambling round. Say you're headed down south, I'm sorrow bound. Seems to me every day I wake up alone, out loud I say that my railroad woman's always gone away. Seems to me every day I wake up alone, out loud I say my railroad woman's always gone away. My railroad woman's always gone away.
This portion of our program is brought to you by Visit North Alabama. The Mountain Lakes Tourist Association traveled to visit the 16 North Alabama counties that make this state what it is. Festivals, attractions, and restaurants all over Alabama. Blount County, Cherokee County, Colbert County, Coleman County, DeKalb County, Edward County, Franklin County, Jackson County, Lauderdale County, Lawrence County, Limestone County, Madison County, Marion County, Marshall County, Morgan County, Winston County. Or visit the Horton Mill Bridge just off Alabama 75, about 5 miles north of Aniana. Built in 1935, all the work was done strictly by hand tools. Think about that for a second. Or how about the North Alabama Barbecue Trail? Trek across North Alabama on a holy, sacred pilgrimage of saturated fat and slow-smoked pork. Other states do their barbecue differently than they do in Alabama, and that's not to say that they don't do it right. But that is absolutely to say that they do it dead wrong. Make plans today to visit North Alabama, because whatever you want to do, you can do it better in North Alabama. Look them up at Visit North Alabama or northalabama.org or hashtag VisitNorthAL. Now let's have another tune here from Matt Sellers, everybody. Matt Sellers.
I used to judge you, and I'd get so mad, but I made you cry and feel so sad. But of all of those girls that I've ever known, you always led me right back home. There was a time when I didn't know which way to turn or which road to go. But of all of those lights that have ever shone, yours always led me right back home. Didn't know which way to turn or which road to go. When the night got so dark and I felt all alone, you always led me right back home. down the picture just to see game number 7 back in '63. He hit it hard and wide, right over the crowd. That was then, this is now. She sits up from a stool at a table near the bar. She used to shine like silver, she used to be a star. But she danced up every muscle that her legs would allow. That was then, and this is now. Memories come and then they go. Memories, they follow me. And how's a man supposed to know? Is that the way things ought to go? Used to sing like thunder in the distance when it broke. He couldn't break the habit that filled his lungs with smoke. He watched his voice evaporate and disappear like a cloud. But that was then, this is now. Memories come and then they go. Memories, they follow me. And how's a man supposed to know? Is that the way things ought to be?
We're going to read you a little bit of our mail, this evening, sent in to us from listeners all over this fine nation who have nothing better to do than to put pen to paper or type out an email using their thumbs on their cellular phone, or to send us a manila envelope delivered by county officials asking us to cease and desist under threat of legal representation. Our first letter comes from Hector Ramirez in Wimberley, Texas. Dear Sean, I don't know why I'm writing you, but I stumbled on your show last month, and I listened to every episode, and I just thought I should do my part and write in since everybody else was doing that. I don't have anything funny to say or anything witty, either. Just thanks for the show. I would like to see you live one day. Well, dear Hector, thank you for the kind words, and I hope you do get to see me live one day. I'm a lot better live than I am dead. That I promise you. Sheila Marks, Shreveport, Louisiana. I make t-shirts for a living, which might not sound like a dream job, but let me tell you, it is. I wanted to do something else when I was younger. Namely, I wanted to make money. And I wanted to do all the right things, meaning climbing the social ladder. But it wasn't working out for me, so my dad convinced me that I needed to start using my creative genes and do something else. He's a very creative person himself, from the inside out. He's always making stuff or painting something. So I tried making a t-shirt with my own hand-drawn designs, and you know what? I had more fun making that shirt than I thought I ever would have. So I've been making t-shirts now ever since, and it has grown into a pretty good business for me. It pays my bills, and I even have some left over for food. And I have my dad to thank for it. I'd like to send you a t-shirt, Sean, if you'd like one. Well, dear Sheila, if you send a t-shirt, I'll wear it. Dan Rolls, Johnson City, Tennessee. I was really wondering if you would tell me, Sean, how your podcast started. It's unique. I stumbled on it on iTunes, and I just wondered, how does a guy do what you have come to do? Well, dear Dan, I'm glad you asked that, because the short answer is mental illness is how it happens. Mental illness and a little bit of nonsense swimming around in your brain that makes you do strange things. I guess really what I'm trying to say is it takes a little off your rocker kind of logic, which I possess lots of, and it takes an incredible amount of ill preparation. Now, all your life through school, the teachers are telling you to be prepared and to always strike while the iron's hot, and all these other little cliches that don't make a whole lot of sense. But I'm going to tell you that this show that we do, and anything I do in my life, works in a pleasant way for me personally, the more unprepared I am. Because the less prepared you are, the less chance of deviating from a plan you have. That is my philosophy. Even this letter that you sent me was not something I had planned on reading, Dan. I just kind of fell into my stack of papers. Let's see how we started. Dan, we bought $57 worth of recording equipment from the newspaper classified sections. And my buddy came and recorded a talk I did in Verbena, Alabama, this little tiny town at a little abandoned church where we had 60 people in the audience. And as of last week, we have recorded our podcast quite a bit. Next month, we're going to be recording our 100th podcast in Bradford, Pennsylvania, which will be weird because I don't know if they will understand the way that I talk. Adrienne Laurie, Nashville, Tennessee. I came to Nashville because I wanted to have an opportunity that you can't get in a small town. I'm 23 years old and from a town in Ohio just outside Marietta that is so small we have 900 people in it. But people in a city, a big city, don't often treat you very good. Not like small towns. There's so much, I guess you'd call it hyper-vigilance everywhere. And what I mean by that is everybody's always trying to elbow their way through life. It feels like that. And I don't feel like I belong here because I'm used to being a little more considerate to my fellow man. But there are people in this town who are a lot like I was. And I've found them, and we help each other get through it. I don't regret moving to Nashville. There's a lot that I like here, except for the traffic, which is terrible. But, Sean, I do admit I'm tired of pretending that I am ambitious when I'm not. I just want to go home sometimes and eat chicken pot pie made by my mother and relax on the porch with my daddy who makes lemonade, and sometimes he makes hard lemonade, but he can do that, Sean, because he's a Catholic. And sometimes I don't know what I'm doing in Nashville. Sometimes I wish I would have stayed home. But anyway, thanks for listening to me. Your friend, Adrienne. Well, dear Adrienne, not that my words matter, but go home. You don't have to go forever, but go home just for a little while. Sit on that porch. I believe it'll do your heart a little bit of good, just knowing that it is still there. Take it from a guy who's made quite a few mistakes in his life. It's never too late to go back home. Chadley Brawlin, Gainesville, Florida. Gainesville. I'm a fourth generation Floridian. And I just want to say thanks for your show. I like it. And you put Florida on a map all unto itself. Even if you are from that part of Florida that we people in Gainesville usually say is actually more like Alabama. It's not really Florida at all. Even so, I still like what you're doing. Florida is the weirdest state, and I'm proud of it. But sometimes it seems like every time there's something wacky on the news, it's always done by some gal or guy who happens to be from Florida. And I just roll my eyes like everybody else, and I say what all Floridians say, yep, that's us. Because we are a weird state. We really are. But we're also a great state. And we have the greatest beauty and climate in the U.S., if you ask me. And I've been all over. We're much better than California. We're a lot better than the North, which is why everybody from the North moves down here. And who in their right mind would ever live on the East Coast with all them rude Yankees? Thanks, Sean. Thanks very much. Well, Chadley, I should say, first off, foremost, Chadley's opinions and views are not necessarily the views and opinions of this broadcast, and we are not held liable for any usage of the word Yankee, because it is not always a positive term here in the South. But Chadley, interestingly enough, I was just up in New York a few months ago, and to my surprise, the people there actually like the word Yankee and use it when referring to themselves. I couldn't believe it. Because I still remember once when my uncle was visiting New York City, and he had driven his truck up there, and he got into an accident. No joke, got into an accident. It was a terrible, terrible accident, but somehow he made it unscathed, and the guy that he'd hit was not hurt either. It was almost a miracle. They got out of the car, and they looked at each other, and they couldn't believe that there were no injuries sustained. And that Yankee man looked at him and said, "Hey, you know, we just witnessed a real miracle, don't you think? An accident like this and nobody got hurt." My uncle said, yeah, we sure did. He said, "You know what I think we should do? I think we ought to celebrate this, because we might never see a miracle like this again." My uncle said, "Sure, why not?" And my uncle went to his truck, and he got 2 solo cups, and that Yankee man went to his car, and he brought out a bottle of whiskey. And they cracked open that bottle, and they poured 2 level glasses of them solo cups, and them Yankee man and my uncle made a toast, and that Yankee said, "Here's to it, let's do it." And they raised their glasses, and my uncle drank all of his whiskey, but that Yankee man didn't touch it. My uncle said, "Hey, wait a second, aren't you gonna drink your whiskey?" And the Yankee man said, "You know what, I think I'll just wait for the cops to come." Bad joke, I know. But I appreciate you giving me your courtesy laugh. Even though it was pity, it still meant a lot to me. Fritz Anderson, Stillwater, Minnesota. Dear Sean, I was visiting Alabama on a fishing trip in Mobile. We left from the Gulf. My friend had rented a charter boat. We were way out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico when we started talking about life and all sorts of serious stuff while fishing together. But since we were fishing, it was kind of weird, because as you know, you don't talk about this stuff when you're fishing among men. It's not the right place. Besides, I'm not from the South, and I have never seen the ocean before, and I just wanted to be alone and think and fish and witness the glorious scenery around me. But at night, if you've never been out on a deep sea fishing trip, Sean, you see the light from the boat lighten up the blue water all around you, and it makes it translucent so that all the things beneath your boat are visible. And you can see these huge shadows glowing underneath the water, moving beneath your boat. And it's eerie, and it's awe-inspiring, and you know there are creatures in the deep that are so much bigger than your boat is that it's humbling. These things are so much bigger than land animals that you get this sense that the world and creation is so much bigger and so much older than you give it credit for, that it will almost bring you to your knees. Except if you did go to your knees on a boat, you would get so viciously seasick you might never recover. Of course, we know the world is big logically. Sean, I get that. But not face to face. And if the world is this big and this vast, and it makes me feel so small like it did, it really puts life in perspective. So my friend Jason and I, it was late at night, started talking about deep things, our own lives, in a way that I really hadn't done before. And then we'd been saving 2 cigars for the end of the trip. We just brought them out and we smoked them right there. Because we decided you never know what comes next. And I wanted to have that moment with my good friend before our trip was over. Even though we'd promised ourselves we'd save him to the end, it felt good to seize the day, seize the moment. Sean, I've been thinking about how big this world is and how old it is ever since I came back. At one point, I looked into the water that night and I saw something as huge as the entire boat, and it took my breath away. I have no idea what it was swimming beneath me, but life is short. And I guess that's what I'm getting at here. I wanted to say that to you. Thanks for the shows. Maybe one day we can share a cigar together on the Gulf of Mexico, since I know you live not far from it. Until then, your Minnesota buddy who is in love forever with the deep water of the Gulf of Mexico, your buddy Fritz. Well, dear Fritz, there is something magical in the Gulf, something sometimes that at critical points of my life I have gone just to look at. I'm serious. I've gone to the beach a lot at nighttime primarily to just stand and watch, because if you catch it right, it looks like standing on the doorstep of heaven, right where God lives. The black water goes on forever. At one time in my life, in a previous life, I used to sail a sailboat that I had, a 23-footer, and I have sailed single-handedly out in the Gulf for a little bit and stayed on board in the middle of the water with my bloodhound Ellie Mae. We'd be out there in the middle of that Gulf water, middle of the night, and I would stay out there and just look at the stars in the water. And I just kept coming up with this idea that I will share with you now. I'm grateful to be alive, right here, right now, in every way and every how. And above all, I'm grateful at this juncture that nothing my ribs or skin hath punctured. And I'm grateful to the God of the air that I once had $57 to spare so that I can make this ridiculous podcast and come to you live in your radio broadcast to meet wonderful people like you, because that's all I ever wanted to do, was to be your friend from now until the end. Thank you for listening to this. That was Letters from Our Listeners. Letters from Our Listeners. Now let's have another tune here from Matt Sellers, everybody. Matt Sellers.
Going to Graceland and I'm going away. Ain't nothing tying me down, ain't got no reason to stay. Say that new life's a-coming, and I know it's for me. I'm gonna jump right in, mama, let it wash all over me. And I said, hey, driver, take it nice and slow. You tell me which way you're heading, it's the way I wanna go. See a big wheel rolling, and I heard the whistle blow. Down at the station, waiting, I'm ready to go. Won't you let me in, mama? Leave my troubles behind. 'Cause I don't like working and work is hard to find. And I said, hey, driver, take it nice and slow. You tell me which way you're heading, it's the way I wanna go. From the distance of my window, you know what I see? This side of the Mississippi, good luck there waiting on me. Going to Graceland, and I'm going away. Ain't nothing tying me down, I ain't got no reason to stay. Won't you let me in, mama? Leave my troubles behind. Lord, I don't like working and work is hard to find. I said, hey, driver, take it nice and slow. You tell me which way you're heading, it's the way I wanna go. Or tell me which way you're heading, it's the way I wanna.
Well, my wife and I have spent 20 days on the road. 20 days on the road, and it's tiring. I've been tired doing what we do. I've spoken at a lot of different places. Most people want to know where I speak and how, and what I do, and because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Nobody grows up desiring to do what it is that I do, which I can't even define what I do. I can't tell you how I got started in it. I can't even really remember how it all seemed to happen. All I know is that we somehow fell into recording this show. 20 days on the road will wear you out. I speak at a lot of swanky places, swanky places. By that I mean I speak at a lot of nursing homes. I speak at a lot of school gymnasiums for second graders who can hardly keep their fingers out of their backsides. I speak in a lot of tiny little towns. Next week I'll be in Craters, Lamoon, Alabama. I speak at a lot of conferences, which is really, really hard. If you've ever been to a conference, you know what hell is like. I just spoke at a conference that was held in a huge convention center. And as soon as I took the stage, everybody gave me this really polite applause that was just, it took about the same amount of sincerity that it would take to scratch your armpit. And they gave me this little applause, and as soon as I took the stage, I took this little microphone, I looked out and I saw about 600 glowing little lights on people's faces. These are cell phones. I would say a lot more about it right now, but I see a lot of them out there tonight. I don't know what they're doing on their cell phone. They could be looking up a word I just used, or they might be looking up my Wikipedia. That's something a lot of people do. They don't just look at you anymore as a human being. They have to look up your Wikipedia. I didn't know I had a Wikipedia until just a few weeks ago when this boy came walking up and showed me my own Wikipedia. Do what? I said. What is, I don't get it. Somebody needed to have some kind of some major chunk of boredom in their day to make a Wikipedia for me. But the world is changing, and everything is cell phone related. Boy, I tell you, it's tough though. Speaking of places where you're not real sure if you're wanted, in them conferences, you never really feel like you're nailing it. You never really feel like you're doing a good job, because no matter what you say, sometimes you're looking for a reaction, and there are no reactions. So no matter what you say, it feels like it landed flat. And all you can hope is that these people are catching up on their cell phone reading and having a good time with their little personal device. I'm My mother says that a cell phone is a lot like passing gas in an elevator. Yes. Everybody has the urge to do it, but it is wrong. I was working in my office before I left for my 20-day extravaganza, and I was looking out this little window of my 1956 Yellowstone camper. That's my office. My office is a 1956 Yellowstone camper trailer, 23 foot long, with one bedroom in the back and a little kitchenette and a bathroom, and most importantly, a beer refrigerator. I bought this camper in Arkansas, just outside of Little Rock. And this camper was real special to me. Really, really was. I found it in the classifieds, and I got excited because it was old and it had been in a barn. It was two-tone, pink on the bottom, white on the top, and it had no rust on it, and it had no axle problems, and the roof was solid, and the bathroom worked, and holy Lord, that beer refrigerator. So I drove up to Little Rock and I got it. I drove through Mississippi, some of the flattest, non-prettiest parts of Mississippi, and I hooked it up to my trailer and I parked in a KOA. And in that KOA, when I was camping that night, I slept in the back and I closed my eyes and I just passed a clean out. When I woke up, my sinuses felt like I had sniffed an entire elephant stuck up there. The funky mold and nastiness had just crept into my bronchial cavities and nasal passages, and it gave me a bronchitis that lasted for 2 months. I almost never used that trailer again. I parked it on my dirt lot with my other campers and my boats and such, and I was going to just let it sit. I wasn't going to mess with it. It was just too nasty inside. Even though it didn't look nasty, apparently there was some sort of funky stuff in there. So I just let it sit. And finally, I was motivated to restore it into an office for myself because I needed a place to write. And what motivated me to restore it was that I was living at the time in my mother-in-law's upstairs bedroom with my wife. You want to know what you're made of, you ought to go live with your mother-in-law in her upstairs bedroom with your wife and your 80-pound bloodhound. It was not unpleasant, I won't say that, but I will say that my mother-in-law wears a hearing aid, and sometimes she forgot to put it in because she was at home. She didn't really ever think about putting it in, and she would walk out to the living room and sit in her recliner. My elderly mother-in-law would turn on that huge 75-inch screen television, and she would blare HGTV Chip and JoJo at the top of its volume. And the TV was located just about 4 feet underneath my bed. And so I would wake up to the sounds of this voice, this HGTV reality TV documentary style voice underneath my bed, so loud it'd rattle me off the mattress and send me onto the floor. You try writing and maintaining a writing schedule with Chip and JoJo going underneath you. So I went to my little dirt lot in my truck, my bloodhound and I got straight to work post-haste modifying that trailer, which soon became my office. I painted it white inside, I laid a little wooden floor, and most importantly, I stocked that beer refrigerator. I've written several books in this trailer. I have written several books, and I have written hundreds, maybe thousands of columns in this trailer, which is kind of fascinating to a lot of people because it is such a small and ugly room. I've had friends come over and they look at it and they say, "This is your office? My God, it looks like it belongs in a ratty trailer park. How can you find inspiration here?" And the truth is, I am inspired by trailer parks because it is these kind of people that I come from. And so I feel right at home, having a home or an office that has more mileage on it than my truck does. While I was sitting there in this office chair I got in front of my desk, which has my laptop and my computer, and it's got an old Zenith radio on it, and it's got a barometer that my father gave me, and I got all sorts of various knickknacks like a Superman statue and some books. I got Larry McMurtry books, Love, Comanche Moon, and Lonesome Dove. Got some history books and some wood carvings from my granddaddy, and I got some signed baseballs. I got a signed baseball from Addison Russell, who used to attend Pace High School, and I once gave a little talk at Pace High School for some kids who treated me like the king of Siam. They were so happy and kind to me, and one of the teachers after my talk met me in the parking lot, and she gave me this ball, and it was signed by Addison Russell, and it was right after the Cubs had won the World Series, and Addison Russell had hit a grand slam in that World Series that helped them win it and break records and make history. And there I was holding this ball from Addison Russell, a man who is a lifetime younger than me, but changed history. I've got a ball from the Montgomery Biscuits on my desk. I've got just various antiques. I was looking out the window, and I saw this fluttering thing fly by. It was really something. And it hit the grass, and it just kind of fluttered, and I saw bright flashes of orange. I walked outside because it was an irregular look, something, I didn't expect to see. I'm used to seeing all sorts of things. We have deer who wander across my property, and I got raccoons and feral cats coming out the wazoo, but nothing orange and fluttery and tiny. And I got out there and I saw this monarch butterfly, and it had a broken wing. Not just a broken wing, but a torn wing. It was completely off. One of his wings was perfect, and the other wing was just a half wing with this shred out of it. And I reached my hand down, kind of out of instinct, really, and he crawled right in it, right in my hand. And he got right on my finger, and I could feel his legs. They have these little grippy things on his legs, and they were just holding on my finger. And I looked at him in the face, and his wings, they'd flutter, but he couldn't fly. He couldn't get that lift generated with that broken wing. And so I just looked at him, that little face of his. He's black. His abdomen's black with these little white spots, and he's bright orange, and he's got these black vein and muscular structure and these little white spots all over his wings. And his antennae, they move around when he gets excited. I walked him into my little office trailer, and I set him down on my phone charger cord, and he gripped his little legs on that phone charger cord, and he sat there. And I expected him to try to fly away, but I guess he was too stunned from whatever had ripped his wing off to try that. So he didn't move. He just stayed there. I could see his antenna moving, and I could see his wings ever so slightly just kind of pulsing with his movements, but he stayed right there. And I wrote all day, and he stood there all day. And when I was done, I was turning off my lights to go back. My house was right across the street from where I parked my ugly little sin trailer. And I was turning off the lights, and I looked at him, and I thought, well, what do I do with him now? I got a butterfly in my office. Lord, people are going to think I lost my mind. So I put my finger out, and he crawled onto my finger, and I brought him up to my face, and I looked at him, and I said, well, what is your name? And he just kind of gently pumped his wings one time. I said, okay, we got to find you a name. Let's see, how about Merle Haggard? If you like that, pump your wings twice for yes, once for no. He pumped his wing once, so he didn't want to be named after old Merle. I said, how about Waylon? He pumped his wing once, no for Waylon. I said, and I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up. I said, how about Willie? And he pumped his wings 2 times. Willie. Well, I wasn't sure if he was a boy or girl, and the name Willie does work for a boy or a girl. I know people whose aunts and mothers and kinfolk are named Willie as women. Or he could have been named after the redheaded stranger. I myself am redheaded, and I love Willie Nelson to death, love Willie Nelson. So Willie and I walked across the street into my house, and Willie was resting on my shoulder like a little parrot. And my wife looked at me and she said, "There's something on your shoulder." I said, "That's Willie." She said, "That's who?" "Willie. Willie, he's a butterfly." She said, "Yeah, I can see, I know what he is. What happened?" So Willie's lost his wing. He needs a place to stay for the night. Can he stay here? And so my wife went into the closet and she was able to find an old candy jar. It's about the size of a fish bowl. You might not, I don't know how to describe it because you don't see them much anymore, but they used to have them in old general stores, and then we got it from a flea market a long time ago. It's just a candy jar that has this huge hole in it, about the size of a 45 record is the hole, and it's a big fish bowl where they used to put candy and pistachios and pieces of licorice whips and all sorts of things like that, and it's got a metal lid that flips down over it. And so we poked some holes in the metal lid, and we filled this little glass jar with pine cone and some black-eyed Susans and some daisies I had picked and some shards of grass and a little bits of pine straw. And I had a sponge in there that I filled with sugar water. I poured sugar water all over this sponge so that he could have dinner. And I placed Willie into that little glass jar. And he took to one of them lazy Susans, those black-eyed Susans, and he got onto that sponge, and I saw him extend something from his face into that sponge like a little feeder snout-looking thing, and he was eating, and I felt so good just seeing him. He sat right beside my bed, and he would just look at me, perched right up against the glass, until I turned out the light. Next morning, I woke up, and I was about to go over to my little office trailer to go right, and I looked at Willie before I left, and I realized that here's an animal that's used to being in the sun, and he don't have no sunlight. So I took that entire fishbowl-sized glass container underneath my arm, carrying it like a big old football. I walked across the street, and I set him down in the yard so the sun could get him, and I let him out of his little glass jar and placed him in the lawn and let him exercise his wing muscles, even though he didn't have no wings. He couldn't fly, but he could jump 3 or 4 inches into the air and land on a piece of grass and get some sunlight. And I put him back in his glass jar, and I brought him inside, and I set him down next to my typewriter, and I started writing, and he sat there with me. And we did this every day for a long time. We worked together. We hung out together. He was my buddy, good old Willie. I grew to really like him. And I would take him back across the street, and he'd sit down next to my bed, and I'd feed him a little bit. And whenever I put new flyers in there, he'd just freak out. And I really enjoyed having him near me. He was beautiful, beautiful. Even though he had a torn wing, it was still a pleasure to see something so beautiful next to my bed, and something that wanted to be around me. I can't explain it. Well, I woke up one morning, and I was going to go right. I was going to go across the street to my office trailer to do my thing, and I picked up that little glass container like I've been doing every morning, and I started to walk across the street, and I set it down in the grass, and I thought to myself, he seems really tired today. And I opened up the lid, and I reached my hand in so that he normally would crawl onto it. And I noticed he wasn't moving. And I just looked at him. Oh, Willie. He lasted for a good while. About 2 weeks he lasted. Beautiful, beautiful monarch butterfly. And I placed him in my hand, and I held him to my face, and I just observed him in a way that I probably couldn't have done had he been alive, because he would have probably been moving. And the intricacy of them wings, oh my word, it's amazing. and the design of his abdomen and his head and his antenna. Oh, what an interesting and beautiful creature. I walked behind my office trailer and I got a shovel from my shed and I dug a single spade hole behind my trailer, which was in the woods. I wrapped him up in an old handkerchief, a pink handkerchief, just in case he was a girl. And I placed him in the ground. And I covered that hole. And then I made a little cross. I carved 2 little sticks that were about the size of my index finger, and I fastened them together with twine to make a cross. And I shoved it in the ground just over his little marker. And I stood there. My wife saw me standing there over this tiny, tiny little grave. And if she ever had any doubts whether I was crazy before, now it was confirmed. But she stood next to me. And we both looked down at that hole. And she said, well, I guess Willie didn't make it, huh? I said, no. He's gone. She said, well, should we say anything? I said, well, I guess. And so I said something that I had said at a funeral once before for a very special friend of mine. It was something that he really liked and something that I think all creatures like. I said, when you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm is a golden sky and the sweet, gentle song of a lark. Walk on through the wind. Walk on through the rain. Though your dreams be tossed and blown, walk on, my friend. Walk on, and you will never walk alone. Hey, thank you very much for having me this evening. It's been a wonderful pleasure. Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks for listening to Sean of the South. I've been your host today, Sean Dietrich, and man, it's been a bona fide pleasure if I do say so myself. This episode was brought to you by Case Knives, a tradition of my family dating back to my granddaddy, who once said the best way to cure idle hands was to build something, so keep your hands sharp with a case knife. And by Folklore Brewing and Meadery, quite literally the best brew in Alabama. Visit folklorebrewingandmeadery.com. The music you heard behind me today was brought to you by Matt Sellers, influenced by folk, roots, and Woody Guthrie, Hank Williams style music that will just take you to another era. He plays solo with several bands in the North Carolina area who value his quick guitar playing and his witty prose. Do yourself a favor and look up Matt Sellers, Sellars, online today and download his new stuff. You will not regret it. To find anything more about what I do, you can visit SeanOfTheSouthShow.com, and there you can find archived episodes dating back to our very first episode all the way to this episode, which you just heard. Though I don't know why, you must have terrible taste in podcasts. And while you're there, I hope you take the time to drop me a line to me about your birthday announcements, wedding invitations, and potluck socials, and I'll do my best to read these things over the air for my friends, because I love to do that sort of stuff for my friends. And speaking of friends, my granddaddy was a very forgetful man. I'll never forget the day he took me aside once, and then he just left me there. Adios.